It's the Growing for Market podcast.
But the more careful you are, then the more vase life there is for your customer to enjoy. And the truth is that we local growers have a huge edge over imported products in terms of we're so close to our markets. And so if we handle things correctly and we're careful about it, then we have the best product that there is anywhere. The freshest, the nicest, but we just have to know how to handle it. And also don't sell garbage.
Hello, and welcome to the Growing for Market podcast, where we talk about growing, marketing, and the business of growing vegetables and flowers for local markets, like farmers markets, CSA, farm stands, and local wholesaling. I'm Rebecca Kutzer-Rice, your host and a writer for Growing for Market magazine. For 33 years, the magazine for vegetable and flower market farmers. If you're enjoying the podcast, just wait till you see the magazine. Go to growingformarket.com for more. Also, if you could give us a follow and a rating, it really helps other like-minded people find the podcast. And now let's take a minute to hear from some of our sponsors. It's with their generous support that we can bring you the podcast for free.
Harnois Greenhouses has been pioneering greenhouse design since 1965, working alongside market gardeners and farmers across North America to deliver turnkey greenhouse solutions. Their mission is simple: supporting growers' success with innovative, high-performance structures engineered for strength, efficiency, and longevity. Designed to withstand high snow and wind loads, their greenhouses optimize brightness, boost yields, and offer a rapid ROI. With over 20,000 projects completed, they're more than just a manufacturer. They're a trusted partner in building sustainable, energy-efficient growing environments. Their NRCS-approved freestanding greenhouse, the Ovaltech, remains a top choice for year-round production. And in 2025, they're introducing a new low-tech high tunnel, starting at just $2 per square foot, perfect for growers seeking an affordable, durable solution. As a Growing for Market listener, you'll receive an exclusive 5% discount on all new structures. Harnois Greenhouses, leading the way in turnkey solutions for local growers. Check them out at harnois.com. That's HARNOIS.com.
Sumi-san Sui, Japanese irrigation, brought to you by Wetterfrosch Farm Tools. It may be a little hard to pronounce, but it's easy to use. The folks at Wetterfrosch have been importing, adapting, and trialing the system for 3 years now, so they know it well. They are farmers themselves and offer technical guidance and on-farm experience. Sumi-san Sui is a proven tool that is highly adaptable for farms and gardens of all sizes. It is quick and easy to deploy when and where you need it, has a broad rectangular coverage area, and uniformly waters multiple beds at a time. It operates on low water pressure, has multi-season durability, and is exceptionally gentle on seeds, plants, and soil. Sumi-san Sui. Call it whatever you like. Just give Wetterfrosch Farm Tools a call. They appreciate your hard work and are here to help make it a little easier and a bit more fun with this exciting new irrigation tool.
Hi, everyone. I'm here today with Diane Szukovathy. Diane owns Jello Mold Farm with her partner Dennis in Mount Vernon, Washington. She's also the treasurer of the Seattle Wholesale Growers Market, who recently published, and Diane was the contributor and the coordinator to the new book, Floral Standards, a practical guide for harvesting and delivering professional quality products. I just have to say as an aside before I introduce Diane that this book is going to be a game changer for the industry, and I'm so excited to share it with you all. And I'm so excited to have Diane here with me today. Hi, Diane. Welcome.
Hi, thank you so much. So good to be here.
Yeah, it's so good to see you. Congratulations on this book. It arrived in my mailbox probably about 3 weeks ago, and I've referenced it probably every single day since then. I've looked up like how long I can hold lupin in the cooler and the right harvest stage that y'all recommend for bachelor's buttons and Orlea, and I just think it is a phenomenal reference. So thank you so much for putting this out there, and congratulations.
Oh, thank you, Ed. Nothing makes me happier, and I speak on behalf of all the farmers of the co-op who contributed to this behemoth project, which was we just needed it to be able to sell our products together in the co-op. And once we had pulled together the information, we realized what a goldmine it was for the industry at large, and we just felt like, well, let's share this because it just seems like people just keep having to learn it all over and over again by themselves. And it's just so nice to have it in one place for growers to access, and work in progress. So a bit humble about it too, because many flower farmers taught us and then we're teaching others and taking information back. So that's kind of how we do.
It's phenomenal. It's definitely just going to become one of these classics in the industry. So thank you. Just to get started, so if you could tell us a little bit about the background about you and Jello Mold Farm out there in Washington.
Yeah, I've been flower farming since the early 2000s. And before that, my husband Dennis and I, we were fine gardeners and estate gardeners in Seattle. So came from a horticultural background and really came in on both of us grew up in the country and we didn't want to keep living in the city, but we love the artsy feeling of the city and all the creative people. And so this was a cool sort of avenue that we fell into, where we bought the piece of land with our hard-earned landscaping money, and we were like, we don't want to just commute. We want to actually make money off this piece of farmland as an experiment, and also because we believe in land stewardship. It's all on our website, but we really believe in it. And so this journey to see how we could make a living off this piece of land really led sort of like almost like a children's book into, well, you can do this, and then maybe this, and then, maybe let's start a co-op. And I think maybe there's a few impulse control issues on along the way, because some good ideas, they were good ideas. And we just we got lucky in terms of when and where we had them, and the people that we had on board to realize them with us, and just a moment in time that's kept unfolding till we have the market. But we certainly couldn't have kept our farm without starting that co-op market, so that was just a part of the journey for us. And we weren't the ones who started by ourselves, but it was a mutual need. I see now there's just generation upon generation of farmers, and flower farming is its own particular type of farming. And it just sort of hit that creative streak that we have, and the hardworking farmer streak, just the right way. And yeah, so I don't know what to say except one day at a time. It's amazing, starting a farm from scratch, and then I think maybe just not knowing how to quit.
That's the trick, right? And I like that you mentioned impulse control. I personally think all good farmers, are risk takers with poor impulse control. So I think that sounds like a perfect mix. So you've alluded a little already to the Seattle Wholesale Growers Market, but can you tell our audience all about that, what it is, what are you all up to out there?
Yeah, we just turned 14 as a business. We're officially as a business entity, we're a cooperative. That's how we're registered with Secretary of State. And we came together and formed in 2011. And it was just a group of Washington and Oregon. There's some Alaskans in there at the beginning, Alaska peony farmers. They ultimately didn't end up kind of gelling with the model, but came together and decided that we needed to own our own market because, things have gone up and down so much, and it's changed. There's this whole new generation of flower farmers. There's so much more focus with the slow flowers movement and local flowers. And there's so much more of an understanding of what that is than there was 20 years ago. And so you have to kind of look at it moments in time. But we just were like, Seattle's a big city to not have anywhere where we can really sell our products and make a living. The wholesalers, they'll buy some local, but they really went overseas a lot, the traditional wholesalers. And at that time, wasn't really, the people who've been around for a while weren't making a good living selling to wholesale anymore, the traditional wholesalers. And those of us who were starting up couldn't figure out a way to, get it sold. We could grow it, but how, grow it and get it sold for enough to make a living. So we leaped in, yes. And over the years, we started with 12 people. We've always had a bit of turnover just because, for various reasons, it's a hard way to make a living too. And people age out, they sell their property, they don't fit well in a group. There's lots of reasons why. We've always just kind of not controlled that part of things, but just rolled with what we had and wove it together. And we got, over the years, a few USDA grants that really helped us stay alive at critical points because we didn't really start with any capital. But we did know early on that we needed to have an actual space where people a cooler and like a physical location. The original idea was, circle the wagons in a parking lot, But I hear a lot of people, the collective idea it was not unique to us. At the time, things weren't percolating quite like they are now. But now I hear just like so many people starting collectives. But it just ended up that I learned how to write grants. Actually, I wrote a multi-state specialty crop block grant, which is insane to not know how to write grants to do a multi-state like that. Applied for it 2 years, just wouldn't quit. And so until we got it.
Wow.
that was the one that allowed us to hire staff and start to become a bigger business. And then it was like, okay, we got to catch up with ourselves if we're going to maintain this after the grant money runs out. So we had a couple of different kinds of grants, a value-added producer grant. And it wasn't like we were living on grants alone. They just helped us to get by until we were big enough to sustain ourselves. And we have been for some years now. But this book that we wrote, our last grant was a USDA Rural Development grant. And it funded us in various ways to help us hire experts to build our business. So one of the things that we realized was that we couldn't get anywhere with our collective brand until we really had identified our quality standards and just were able to distribute that information back to our membership so that people were selling the same things and calling it the same thing for the same price, basically. Otherwise, the customer just has a very discombobulated experience of shopping in the co-op, particularly in ordering product and whatnot. So that was the very beginnings. We were able to, through that grant, to hire Dr. John Dole from North Carolina. I think it's North Carolina State, is it?
I think
Forgive
that's
me.
right.
I'm always bollocksing up. It was wonderful, wonderful resource for the whole nation, actually the continent, for flower farmers. It's a lot of post-harvest research. He dedicated his life and his career, and he still is at it, to post-harvest research and education. And so he's really knowledgeable and has a lab and has done a ton of work down there with a lot of amazing graduate students. And so anyway, we met with him on Zoom. It was during COVID. And we're like, hey, can you help us out with some basic standards and then just vet our information and help us with what we're doing? And so he talked to us a little bit about how to vase test for applied science and how to do it well. We're not laboratory scientists, but we were able to have a kind of a cohesion and an integrity about what we were doing with his guidance, which was so lovely. And of course, we're like little daredevils, like all farmers. So we're like, oh yeah, let's do this. And so we wrote ourselves a series. We wrote a best practices sheet and a series of PDFs for all of the main crops that we needed to sell. And then we had that for 3 years. It started to get a little out of date. And then we just had a retreat with our board. And I would clarify with you also that I'm the treasurer of the board. And so our board is volunteer, and it's 6 people who are members of the co-op. The co-op is 20 people right now, 20 members. So it's owned by 20 farmers. And so as treasurer, I'm an officer of the board, but we're volunteer in what we do. So it's like a lot of work keeping this business going. It's a lot of dedication by a lot of growers. And that's part of why the book doesn't have a technical author. The author is the co-op, is because it really is much classier, I think, to not have individuals stand out when you have a group. It's very smart, bringing a group together to highlight the whole group in terms of the way our farmers so generously contributed information. So, I'm probably going on and on.
No, this is great background, and how phenomenal that you had John Dole to help sort of get the gears turning on this. I know John Dole is a big Growing for Market fan, so if he's out there listening, hi John, we're all big fans of you. So this is just incredible. Just to back up a little bit, the Growers Market, just for people who don't know, you're primarily or maybe exclusively selling to florists in the trade. Is this correct, or do you sell it all to the public as well?
We actually do sell to both. We're kind of like the San Francisco market, some of the other markets. What we have we're primarily to the floral trade and grocery. So we do primarily wholesale, and we're open from 6 a.m. to 1 p.m. on weekdays, and then 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. on Sundays. And then on the weekdays, we're from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. The public can also shop there they pay a percentage higher price, like 40% more or something. So but it's like, yeah, we serve our customers that are wholesale, but the public is a substantial part of our customer base. And it is part of the world. We have a lot of really botanically knowledgeable people who love all the odd stuff that we have and all the local, and they're super supportive too. So it's a good community that way.
That's so cool. What a great place. And I think you alluded to it, but I think when this started, that really wasn't as common of a model, but it does seem like just in the last 4 or 5 years, these floral co-ops and collectives are really starting to take off. I know here just on the East Coast in New Jersey, there have been like 3 or 4 have popped up around us recently. So I just love the sort of collaboration amongst local growers. And thank you for helping kind of inspire and guide many of them. So you got, you had these PDFs, these sort of standards for your growers, and then it kind of evolved into this bigger thing. Can you talk a little bit more about, I guess it's interesting, I guess it makes sense that all these different flowers are coming from 20 different farms, that there would need to be some kind of guidance around making them more consistent, bunch size, and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was essential. And it's not just, like, first of all, if you farm, no plant is like another plant. They're so different in how they need to be treated. If you get into the plant world at all, it's fascinating, but it's also just so detailed. And it's just like not possible to say, oh yeah, pick this or that, do that. It's just like, I don't know, very few people's brains could carry that much information, particularly with seasonal products. And so we were getting situations where we'd have product arrive on the floor, and maybe it's picked at the wrong harvest stage, and it's like just not quality. When the customer purchases, they don't think, oh, that farm sold me some sketchy stuff. They think that co-op's kind of jivey.
Yeah.
So it's a shared brand situation that is just, it's like we are nothing without quality. It's a perishable industry. And then we're also pioneers, we're innovators, like a lot of flower. I mean, we're just, can you cut it? Okay, base test it. Okay, good. So we're always introducing new things. And so like that stuff, we need to educate our customers as well and our staff. So trying to work with farmers and get, and there's various reasons why. Mostly it's like most growers are fantastic at farming, and then just maybe don't always have the knowledge of how to get it sold. That's a whole other piece. And so just having that extra information, and then our staff can come back, because we have, I think, about 12 people on staff now. So it's like it's grown over the years, and so now we have staff, and it gives them a kind of a dispassionate, like not a personalized thing. It's like, okay, here's our standard. If this isn't meeting the standard, there's a way to have a conversation about it that's not emotional. And because we work so dang hard, and nobody wants their product to be rejected or crashing, or so it's hard to hear that. But if you have the book, it just makes it so much easier to communicate that. And the same thing with like number of stems in a bunch. It's not just, are they wimpy stems? You better put some bulk in there. We talk about that idea of heft and just that fair value to the customer, so that they feel, like we can maintain our individual identities as farms, but the customer can purchase product and know what they're, kind of be able to count on what they're ordering or buying.
Absolutely. No, it makes so much sense. And I like the idea that it removes any sort of personal criticism, and now there really is a standard that growers can refer to. I really just think this is going to be such a valuable resource for all of these new co-ops that are coming out, but as well as for individual farmers to really help provide that consistency for their own brands. And now let's take a minute to hear from some of our sponsors. It's with their generous support that we can bring you the podcast for free.
Spring is here, and CSA season is in full swing. If you're ready to grow your CSA and reclaim your time, Farmhand is here to help. With built-in marketing and subscription tools that automate everything from customer support and newsletters to weekly add-ons and billing, Farmhand helps you delegate the busy work so you can stay focused on the farm. On average, Farmhand saves CSA farmers over 10 hours a week. That's 10 extra hours to spend with your family, in the field, or just taking a well-earned breather. Set up a one-to-one demo with Ari, Farmhand's founder and a farmer himself. He'll show you exactly how to streamline your operations, grow your CSA, and stay competitive, all with tools designed for small farms. Make this your most profitable season yet. Get started at farmhand.partners/GFM. That's farmhand.partners/GFM.
And now back to the show. So just to deep dive a little bit now into the actual content of the book, right? I'm a flower farmer too, so I want to talk about the flowers. The book starts out with some really excellent sort of general high-level guidelines just around harvest quality, post-harvest care, flower storage. I'd love to hear some of the co-op's like top general tips that you give for all crops just in general.
Oh yeah, love to share that. It'd be a big passion for the, just the handling and having a sense of respect for the quality of our whole profession is just it's a real career. It's a noble profession, floral, and most of our products are perishable. Fresh cut flowers. And so keeping the cold chain is so important. We talk about that. It doesn't have to be scary. I used to be scared of some of this stuff when I like a lot of people. I learned to be a farmer from getting my information from here and there and wherever I could get it. And a lot of it was before the internet was quite so accessible, and you just have to go find books and read and figure it out and hear from somebody tells you something or whatever, but you don't know if it's true. And so you have this like a kind of internal anxiety, and it's like so nice to just go, okay, no, cold shade just means, don't be driving your dang peonies to market in the middle of the afternoon when it's 75 degrees outside. Some of that's common sense. But the more careful you are, then the more vase life there is for your customer to enjoy. And the truth is that we local growers have a huge edge over imported products in terms of we're so close to our markets. And so if we handle things correctly and we're careful about it, then we have the best product that there is anywhere. The freshest, the nicest, but we just have to know how to handle it. And also don't sell garbage. That's always like, use your compost pile. I mean, like I always feel like that, but okay, well, we have a reputation for being pretty darn good, careful growers. Like we'll deliver quality. We really work on that. I probably drive that here on this farm pretty hard. And it's important because I have relationships with florists and I know them and I know how hard they work. They don't make an easy living. And the last thing I want to do is sell them some crap and then it crashes on them when they're trying to put a wedding together or something. That's just not okay. It's not professional. And then those people, those small business is small business. It really matters. So yeah, that's a lot of it. I would say stage of harvest is utterly important and so different for different crops. It's just so different. So just that book is so nice that way. Like for instance, I was just harvesting Weigela this morning. And, it's like, well, Weigela is not the most fantastic floral crop if you're selling to weekly. It's just saying it's the short-lived. It's more of an event flower. It'll go 4 or 5 days, and it'll be a little longer in the cooler first, but it's like, it's kind of a here and there, but it doesn't open much after. Same with sweet peas. Other things, you have to get them kind of tight, like honeysuckle. You got to get it real tight because it's like already opening, whether you put it in water or not. So it's like that know-how, and then to record it so that you can, not just do a good job growing it, but do a good job delivering a quality product. Kind of see those as like two different jobs, kind of.
Definitely. And, of course, as a grower, it's always best to do our own tests of things, our own experiments, but sometimes there just isn't a chance. I mentioned the Orlea earlier. It's going to bloom this week and then it's done. So if I'm cutting it too late, that's it for the year. I don't have a chance to sort of take the time to vase test it and experiment with it. And, it takes me a full year to try again. So it's so nice to have this book to refer to, at least as a starting point, to say, okay, well, here's where I could try to start cutting it and see how it does. So this is just great.
It is a super good point you make there, Rebecca, which is this is not meant to take the place of any farmer doing their own research. It just gives you a good confidence to, that you can sell this crop before you have to have to wait a year to do it. But still, I mean, everything, there's a lot of variability always. It's a perishable industry. So, we'd say it's not a cure-all for everything. It's just a big help is what it's meant to be.
It is a big help. And I'll give another example, the lupin. And usually I'm really intense about getting that out the door as fast as we can. Like we don't hold it for more than 12 or 24 hours. But I think in the book, you say you can hold it maybe in the cooler for like 4 or 5 days. And I hadn't even really tried that. And then we tried it and hey, it held up just fine. So the book, I think, also invites growers to sort of push the boundaries and see what's possible for what crop in a special way.
Well, it's not an easy way to make a living. You really want to get those, if you're going to grow them, you really want to get them sold if you can. So you want to know, what's your parameters that still be professional,
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that the storage information is so useful, the bunch size, the stage of harvest, and you give sort of different suggestions on different crops, kind of where you could try to harvest them for different purposes. And it's just really valuable. So the book does cover a huge range of crops, pretty much like A to Z of every flower and foliage I could think of. I couldn't think of anything I grow that wasn't in the book. And it also gives some sort of lots of high level on a lot of things, and then some real deeper dives on certain crops that I imagine are more popular with the co-op. So one of those that I thought there was a great overview of, and is everybody's favorite flower to talk about, was dahlias. I imagine being out there in the Pacific Northwest that you all are selling a lot of dahlias. And that's a crop that, just knowing from my own experience, can be highly, highly variable in terms of, stem length, harvest stage, all of that stuff from farm to farm. So what are some of the dahlia guidelines that you have established to enable more consistency across growers?
So you'd think that could be a simple question, but it actually turns out it's not. And what we did is we base tested well over 150 varieties to see what they would do. This is part of what John Dole helped us with, was to, kind of set up a good way of doing it. Did it here on our farm. We've got an insulated room in our barn that we could keep like within 2 degrees of room temperature, 68 degrees Fahrenheit, so that we could compare apples to apples. And then our farms contributed. We had to create a series of stages so that we could compare correctly. So we photographed that and get everybody the photos and say, okay, can you send me a set of 4, stages 1 through 4 on, and we're looking for all the varieties, particularly that we're already selling through the co-op or were popular. We just wanted to know, what will they do? And the truth is they're so varied. They're all over the map. Some will go 4 days vase life. Dinner plates won't go, or event flower, but who knew? Some of them are they're like rock solid for grocery weeklies. And some of them are like, well, that's really more of an event flower. And, like Wine-Eyed Jill, well, it kind of will go kind of for a weekly, but day 4 or 5, it starts to turn kind of like a uninspired sort of yellow with kind of weird spots on it and stuff. And it's like, well, maybe more of an event flower, and we kind of note that. And then we took all this information. I think probably 15 different farms contributed to our vase trials. And then we were able to create a great big giant master sheet. And then from that, we were able to kind of make 4 or 5 pages of charts of recommended varieties. And most of those will hold up long enough, at least 6 days. We figure if it goes 6 days, it's okay for a weekly or a market bouquet, kind of thing. Just helping people to understand. The whole idea was, I always had this idea there would be like a, 32 crayon box. What's the ones, you grow them all and they're gorgeous and your head's always turned into that new one and all that. But what are the ones that are just stable? And also the other thing is, people don't often account for the productivity of a plant. It's not just, can you vase test it? Will it last and all that? But how about, will it shoot enough stems to be worth the row space? So we were kind of looking at that too. So we bolded the varieties that the growers were recommending, and especially cross-checking multiple growers were like, yeah, that's a good one. But it's also stage of harvest is not, so you kind of need to get to know if you're growing dahlias, you kind of need to get to know your individuals out there. Like Cornell, got to pick it pretty tight because it keeps opening quite a lot after you pick it, and it will shatter prematurely if you pick it too open, and it's startling. Others don't open a lot, and you have to wait till stage 3 to get them. And so we made notes of that so that it's not every dahlia that ever bloomed. And I'm sure that when we publish another edition of the book, we'll be doing more testing, because there's always we're a trend-driven industry. There's always something new out there that everybody wants and needs to know about. But at least we caught a lot of it, and we're able to really help people. Ideally, you're still experimenting as a farmer, but you have this baseline to work from, where you're not just buying like crates of dahlias you hope will work out, that you have some sense of it and you can experiment on the edges of that instead of just always learning. And then, if you're like me, I grew dahlias for about 12 years, got sick of them, grew a lot. I can't stand the smell of, the cut stem anymore, because I just did so many dahlias for so long, didn't get a day off for a lot of summers. And so once I was done with them, I'm like, okay, I'm over it. But then it's like, well, it seems like people have been doing that for, I'm one of a chain of growers. And it's like, well, could we maybe share some of this information instead of making everybody start all over from scratch again? It just doesn't make any sense.
Absolutely.
I think that's the whole collective mentality. It's like, could we share this? So maybe you could go to take it a little further and maybe share that back, and we could have a little bit more chance of everyone making a living. Seems like a good idea.
Definitely. Yeah, that was me about 2 years ago. I think we tried 200 varieties of dahlias, and of those, I probably still grow 3. So I wish I had that list when I was starting out with all those different dahlias. And just on the dahlias, what is the post-harvest care that you found was best? I know some growers are using boiling water, which I always thought sounded a little bit no way, or holding solution. What is recommended and what worked best?
So we use a low sugar holding solution. Chrysal and Floral Life both make a version of it in transport and, kind of getting it there. And then most will do better with floral preservative in terms of the end user on the table, but you don't have to use it. It'll sometimes get you an extra day or so. But that early holding solution, we have a big section in the book that talks about different handling. And I know not everybody loves to use some of those solutions. I don't think Most of the stuff we're using here is certified okay for septic systems. It's not like horrible chemicals, but they are also proprietary, don't share. But basically, a holding solution just has an acidifier, because most plants will drink and hydrate better with acidic water. So something that acidifies the water, something that a little bit of sugar, because if it's got a flower, it needs to be fed a little. That's what a low sugar means. You're not overfeeding it so it doesn't bloom prematurely. And then a bactericide, because sugar promotes the growth of bacteria, which clogs the stem. That's the basic science behind it. We cover it in the book enough to be able to know, be oriented and kind of understand what choices you're making. But yeah, we trialed everything with plain water and then a solution so we could compare with a baseline. Yeah, that was John. John helped us set those experiments up.
That's great. And we use the holding solution on ours. So but I didn't realize that we should be recommending that the end user use a floral preservative as well on the dahlias. So we'll start.
Yeah. You take a look at the information a little more clearly in the book, but it does, for some of them, not all of them, but for most of them, it does help a little bit.
That's great. So another crop that is blooming here in New Jersey in May that the book covers in a lot of detail is sweet peas, which is another very finicky one, right? So the book, I thought, did a really interesting job of describing some different ways that a grower could harvest them for sale. Can you talk a little bit about how the growers are having the most success with sweet peas and getting them to last and selling them? Yeah.
That's a great question. And, that question brings up something, too, is that we are regional to the Pacific Northwest, and most of the information translates. Like dahlia season might be a little bit different time of year for you and I, but, most, the same dahlias will grow the same way or whatever. But sweet peas are a little bit trickier that way because we have a climate that's very similar to Britain, which is where the sweet pea rules supreme, right? And has been bred and shown and as a national pastime. And so, all the Spencer varieties grow really well here in this part of the continent, and not so much. Maybe you might be growing different varieties there on the East Coast. You might find that those Spencer varieties don't take the heat that might come earlier in the spring for you. So in that book, we have recommended varieties for all of the different entries. And in that case, I think that information might need a little bit more translation for region than some of the other parts of the book. So I would say that. So, you're trying to find these varieties that have long stems and will produce enough flowers on a stem to be showy. But in general, with sweet peas, you've got this thing where the flowers don't open a lot after you harvest. So you can't harvest them tight and expect them to open. So you've got to get them visual, but you don't want them all the way open so that the bottom ones are kind of starting to get gross. There's a line there of harvest stage. It's very important. They're very delicate and people love them. They have that same kind of appeal that the lilac has, and it's the same kind of perishability stresses too. And so, it's the best they're local. And then, you don't want water sloshing up on the petals are very kind of delicate. And so they don't do well with getting water on them. So we generally recommend putting, kind of a little bit less in your buckets than you would for other things, especially in transport when you're kind of jiggling them around a little bit. So you got to watch that. And then they definitely benefit from the same treatments that we're just talking about with dahlias. So they appreciate some floral solutions with sugar in them to help them last a little longer. And, they're just picky. And I suppose you have to really probably need to cross-pollinate information in the book. And if you're in a different region, you also need to talk to your growers who are growing them near you for their tricks as well. Shade cloth, maybe in some places. For us, it's we would say, because we tend to get wetter springs pretty frequently, it's probably better growing them in a house. But in your climate, it may be that in a house is going to bake them and make them shut down real quick. So I don't think growers tend to blame themselves. And some of it is just oh my God, you're doing something really difficult here. So give yourself some credit. And then gambling, because we have these kind of, who knows what kind of winter we'll get. So if we get a kind of a milder winter, El Nino-ish winter, then you can start them in the fall in an unheated hoop house, and then you can get these fantastic sweet peas before Mother's Day. The problem is, and we did that one year, and we thought we had it figured out. And then, of course, the next winter it goes down to 3 degrees, and you have, even with a second frost blanket, it's no cigar, or no sweet pea, I should say. And so then it's oh my God, that's a complete loss of 2 hoop house beds and a lot of love, and it's heartbreaking. So I don't know. Most of the growers that were around, at least our part of the world, it's gambling on those earlier spring crops that wintered over is a bit dicey, and I'm sure it's more that way for you.
Oh, yeah. So here, actually, we only grow sweet peas in like a minimally heated house. So we don't have to gamble with that extra cold, but we're able to fall plant them. And then we usually choose some of the more like short day or day length neutral varieties, like I guess like winter elegance that'll bloom earlier because, yeah, forget about it once it gets too hot. So I always admire all the sweet pea, sort of much more interesting varieties that you're able to grow out there. And the debate we have on our farm is all about harvesting them sort of by the stem or on the vine. So my husband much prefers them on the vine. I always want to have the sort of flower farmer cachet of those nice long individual stems, kind of Japanese style. So I'm curious what the market is having the most success with.
Well, we used to grow them. There's a lot of crops we used to grow. We used to grow them in volume. And what we would do is we would harvest them by the stems. And like we sold a lot of bunches to grocery. That was a really popular item to grocery. And the co-op still does. What we would do is we'd let them get taller. They get about 10 feet tall in our houses. And then once they get up to the last part, then we'd harvest the stems. But other people do it different ways. The vines, I mean, because they don't really grow back once you've harvested that vine in the same way. So you could get kind of both if you followed the kind of natural rhythm of the plants. And usually by about then it was getting a little hotter and the stems are getting a little shorter, and then the vine is a lot easier to, handle and sell. So that was how we were doing it. But I would say in the market, both ways are very popular, but volume to grocery is, and same with dahlias, actually, that volume to grocery it's a huge help. And it's a great thing that our co-op does and other collectives can do is, your individual farm might not have enough for a grocery to bother with you as a vendor, but if they can get all this different stuff from a co-op, then they can. The beauty of it is you can select out whole color palettes for different, because it's always trend driven. Different florists can buy you out of coral or burgundy or whatever for one picking, and you can still have the mixed bunches for grocery, and they just don't have as much of that color in there. And it's a nice way of evening out the trend-driven kind of stuff, because grocery just wants it bright, so it's nice. It's lovely that way.
That's really cool. Yeah, I don't know if a lot of the co-ops out here are selling to grocery, and I think that is like you say, a really smart way to kind of funnel some more flowers and also get that volume because grocery can be kind of an intimidating level of volume. So that's interesting to me that grocery is buying sweet peas. I just feel like it's such a short-lived, sort of short vase life flower, but so beautiful.
Yeah, it depends on the marketing in the grocery store. They have to get it, and sometimes they do, sometimes they don't.
Yeah, that makes sense. So the book talks a lot about geotropism, or that annoying habit of spiky flowers that, are bending. We're sort of in that big spike season here. So, the snapdragons, the lupin, the foxglove. And if you don't have it perfectly upright in the bucket, it gets super bendy. The book refers to that a lot. So I was curious if you or the growers have any sort of creative suggestions for helping keep those flowers upright during storage and transport.
I would say bucket choice is a big one. So packing full buckets really helps. And like for those, I really love do you know those half Proconas? I can't remember, they call them a Valencia. Can't remember what they call them. They look like kind of like almost like a trash can size would be. They're just a half of the regular standard rectangular Procona. Those things are great because you can pack a certain number of bunches in there and they don't get stuffed, but they keep each other upright. So just having the right kind of bucket is huge, for whatever product it is. And then just making sure that the product doesn't slump over in the bucket. Sometimes it'll shift in transport. And so you'll want to realign it. And also there's geotropism, and good grief, what is wrong with my brain right now? There's another. So geotropism it's following gravity. It's orienting itself. And then there's the other one where they follow light. So it has to do with whether you keep light on in your cooler some too, or like how that they see a light source like a window off and they're going to all go after that. So that's another thing to keep in mind is how some of them respond to light. We talk about it in the book. I think lupin has both characteristics. Little devils. I used to grow them too. And they'll get L-shaped on you in a spiral. It actually is kind of cool sometimes, but not always what the customer wants.
Yeah, sometimes we just put the really funky ones in a big vase and say, this is what it's supposed to do. Just enjoy the show and people eat it up. So I guess that's my tip. Yeah.
Yeah.
So one crop that I think that your farm Jello mold is like iconically known for are those hellebores. I see them on social media. They just are so spectacular. And I was just wondering if you could give us kind of like a deep dive, not just on all the post-harvest stuff, but also just how you're growing those. I think you're growing them in high tunnels, but I'd love to hear some secrets if you would share.
I would love to share because I think they are a focal flower that hasn't found its full market yet. I really do think they're amazing, and they're any garden enthusiast is, they're just, the florists embrace them because they're just so seasonal. But the thing is, there's hellebores orientalis, and that was traditionally for a long time all that we were seeing as cuts, and all we were personally growing here as cuts and orientalis. Some of those are hybrids, but we just call them orientalis. And those ones come for us in March and April and, kind of get affected quite a bit by later cold spring weather. And, they're a little bit dicey because they're coming on such a transitional time from winter to spring. But the biggest bugger about those is they just don't hold up reliably they'll droop on you, just apparently randomly. And there's a ton of kind of folk wisdom out there about how to get around that, prick little pins in the stand. I was like, by the way, generally don't boil stems. It's kind of like cooking broccoli. It's not usually going to get you where you're trying to go. There's some wisdom in that. I mean, there may be some exception. There's always an exception in the plant world, but in general, and all those things that take a lot of time, if you're trying to grow in volume, like to sell to wholesale, most of that, you can't sit there. Maybe you could invent yourself a little pin pricker. I don't know, but that's not what works. What we found was with the orientalis, you just have to wait on the harvest stage. And it's a patience game because you really want to pick them because it's early in the year and the flowers are beautiful, but you really have to wait for the orientalis until the flower parts have fallen from the original first bloom. They've fallen completely, and you can see the seed head in the middle, and then the two next blooms coming are dropping their flower parts. At that point, they'll hold up pretty reliably, actually quite reliably. And I think we use a little bit of, I said in the book, but I think we use a little low sugar holding solution for those. But what's interesting is there's this whole other avenue of hellebores that have come out in the last 10, 15 years. The Ice and Roses series, the Frost Kiss series, we call them the hybrids. And most of them have some degree of orientalis in them, but they're crossbred there's a couple of different European breeding companies. Heuger's one, and I'm not sure who's the company that's doing Frost Kiss, but they're been wonderfully innovative, and they're driven. A lot of times we don't get the research and the innovation that we could use in the cut flower trade because it's not perceived as having enough dollars attached to the industry to really justify the breeding. But in Europe, they breed them, they treat them like a potted plant as a gift for Christmas time or Yule gift. So that it's treated as a bred to be a potted plant gift during the holidays. And so because of that, there's this huge demand. Like we would do poinsettias, that they do that. And so the breeding had a lot of a lot of potential sales behind it. So these companies were really, really worked and did amazing work to create all these beautiful varieties that bloom way earlier than the orientalis do traditionally. And there's just a huge range of them. And about the year that ASCFG kind of called them out as a cut flower of the year, which I thought was very innovative and forward thinking of ASCFG to kind of the growers who are part of that to vote it in. We decided to dedicate a whole hoop house to just trialing them. We decided, okay, let's not do this small. Let's see if it'll happen. And there's a woman named Sabina who works for Heuger who lives in our area and comes and visits periodically because she's very curious and takes pictures. And because they've never really seen them as being grown in the ground. And for the cut flower trade, it's kind of a new avenue or new-ish, I should say. I mean, people have been growing them, but it's like it takes a while for that information to kind of get big enough to be noticed. And we built that hoop house, a 20 by 96-foot hoop house with like 4 beds of these different kinds of hybrids, and in 72 plug trays, put them in like in the fall. And I think a little bit over a year later, one year went by, and the next year, we took a truckload of hybrid hellebores to the market for Valentine's Day. I was shocked.
Wow.
Me unheated hoop. I mean, you do have to watch the really cold temps and make sure you put that second frost blanket layer on. But I was startled by how quickly they developed, how robust they are, and more than anything, what's wonderful about them is you don't have to wait for the harvest stage. When one bloom is open and the next ones are starting to open, you can get them. And with those, for some reason, and I don't know, a lot of times, and there's information in that book, we don't quite know why, but we know it works because we trialed it. And this one was a tip from the Heuger, was like, just use those chlorine pills. And it seems to and give them, and make sure that you don't just cut them fresh and hand them to your customer. Make sure you condition them overnight in a cold, dark cooler. Something about that one night to drink gives them, and then their vase life is phenomenal. They're reliable, and they have a window of harvest is 2 or 3 months. Now, we do have issues with aphids. All hellebores get them. The hybrids get them real bad, but it's in the time of year when we're not harvesting because it's cold when we're harvesting. So we just use it's a little bit strenuous, but we do soap sprays, and it seems to work really well. But the key is just knowing your harvest stage and what your post-harvest treatments are. And so that's the book right there. It's just like that. And then being able to have the experts share information with us generously so that we know where to start and stop on things. Incredible. And so that market is just, I feel like because there's such a demand for local, and it's, at least in our part of the continent, it's difficult to bring. I mean, I always cursed Valentine's Day. It's like, who's supposed to bring a focal flower at Valentine's Day without a heated house,
Yes.
And so it's like, wow, we can. And it's I just think that's amazing.
That's incredible. Forgive my ignorance. Do hellebores have a cooling requirement? So, for example, if you're going to grow peonies in a hoop, you might want to keep it open for most of the winter and then close it up. With the hellebores, do you just sort of keep it closed and keep them cozy all winter?
That's a great question, and I'm not sure I can fully answer it, but I would say in our part of the world, we're looking at stem length, and we're noticing that shade cloth is not probably a bad idea. We just open the hoops up. So the heat is more of an issue in the summer, and we haven't so far used shade cloth, but we just open the hoops completely up as much as we can, roll up the sides, keep the doors, vents all open. And if we get a warmer summer, it seems to be a correlation, and even a warmer fall, a correlation with shorter stems. We still seem to be able to sell them though, but that is something that we're still kind of puzzling out. As far as a cooling period, I don't know if there is one, so I'm not going to fake answer it. That's one of the things we try to do with that book is not give blurry stick answers.
Good. Yeah. That's fascinating. For Valentine's Day, it's just so early. Now you're going to have to, so I do grow year round in the winter at heated hoops, but if there's something I could grow kind of in an unheated house, all the better. So you're inspiring me, Diane, to give this a try.
But I don't live in New Jersey, so just
Sure.
Yeah. With care. Yeah.
Fair warning. Yeah. The book covers so many crops, a lot of really interesting flowers. I mean, sort of everything I grow is in there. And then a ton of things I don't grow, some of which I've never even heard of, especially some of the foliage crops in there. And I'm sure, again, maybe they wouldn't all thrive in New Jersey, but I'm really curious what are some of the more unique crops that you think local growers should try out?
There's such an unexplored frontier. I mean, it's cool. And a lot of it does translate to different zones. One of the things we have going for us too, our manager, Brad Seeby, used to run several different nurseries. That was his career for a long time. So he's really horticulturally knowledgeable and really passionate about he shares that, and all our growers are like that too. A lot of us are like, new plant, urge. And so we're always kind of innovating and finding new things. But foliages, especially woody foliages, there's so much room in that, and it's not the most, the flowers are what everybody turns, it's what drives, we call it a flower market, but we sell floral products and everything. But there's early on we were one of early people into raspberry, and that is a huge one now. And I think people are kind of universally growing that one now, which is great because it's such an easy local crop for a lot of different parts of the country. And the snowberries are really interesting for foliages, and that's something that we kind of discovered as they're quite bulletproof. And so it's not like you can take a crop that you're already growing and have another way of selling it. So that's been pretty great. We're always just trying what's the next new thing we could grow, Weigela foliage works. Great. Okay, cool. It turns a really cool color. A lot of the street trees are amazing. The oaks, the parodias, and that's a lot of Dennis and my innovation has been in those areas. I think conifers are a really interesting arena that was one of the hardest parts of the book to pull together. I really relied a lot on Brad for that information because people I was, a fine gardener for a long time, but I got to say, and I did, my plant ID and I speak my Latin and everything, but I got to say the conifers are not the stuff that sticks as well as some, I have a million of them. A lot of them are bred to be tiny, and it's hard to know your way through there. But, people the designers they drive it a lot of times. They're starting to use conifers other times besides November and December. It's like people started, it's a plant. It's those are leaves, it's the same. This is a plant world, has a million ways of expressing itself and getting its needs met. And that's a lot of all the forms of nature is a lot of what drives the passion, keeps us all working like dogs, So, yeah, I was just it's like sorbaria, or, it's like those of us who hang out at the garden centers in the house where the really interesting stuff is, we're like, oh yeah, cool. Not all of it translates into being a great cut. I've been in love with witch hazel forever. It's all the hazel family generally is good cuts, like but not all of them grow fast, or like they don't really like Daphnes are another one where they're like, oh my God, stop my heart. But I don't know if I would want to start a Daphne farm. It's pretty slow growing. You know what I mean? But it's like, so some of it just juices the other stuff and keeps the customers like super happy to come back and see what they're going to find next week. But, so it all kind of dovetails together from what I know. But I know that just because we've done such a small amount of experimenting, I mean, there's so many really bright farmers out there. It just, our intellectual, you think about, well, this book is, contributions of 20 or 30 farms, which I might add that the co-op sells the products of a lot more farms than just the membership too. So it's a lot of people flowing in, some of those contributed to the book as well, those farmers, so it's like we're a bigger community than just the little entity of the co-op. It's just like, you think about all that creativity, and it's just a matter of organizing it in such a way that it can be used.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, the book has beautiful full color photographs throughout. And I think it's just also, on top of all this information, just a great inspiration to kind of flip through and think, "Oh, I never thought about trying that as a cut," or I've never even heard of that plant before, and sort of to a diving board to go and learn more about these potential cut flowers and foliages. So yeah, it's beautiful just to look at as well.
Thank you. And I think the world of woody crops is not that is people are kind of, a lot of folks come to flower farming from being row crop growers and veg growers and whatnot. And they're still plants. You may have different issues when you're doing permanent plantings. All kinds of weeds will ultimately win, perennial weeds. But it's still, it's just there's so much more than just the zinnias and marigolds. Not that there's anything wrong with those things, but there's so much more.
That's a great reminder. That's just sort of switching gears a little bit. I was interested by the decision that at the end of the book, there is a price list to include that. I'm just sure that prices kind of vary and are all over the place. And I just wanted to chat a little bit about pricing. I know it's something that a lot of growers struggle with. I struggle with it. And especially with this co-op, with so many growers coming together, I'm just curious sort of how the co-op is handling pricing. Are you setting pricing for growers? Sort of how are we ensuring it stays competitive for the growers and also for the florist customers?
So, I would say that's a work in progress. I'm not going to claim to be some expert up on a soapbox with this, but, obviously we need to make a living, and the co-op really helps us in that we have paid staff. We have to pay for them. So there's members pay 30%, of our sales price, to run the co-op, to sell our products. And so we have to be competitive, but we have found over time that quality and reliability and people being able to the convenience of being able to come to one place and find so many things more than you would find from one small farm. Those things ultimately, they are a stable place to build a business from. But there's so much flash here gone, there's a lot of flux in the cut flower farming world. People start and they decide maybe it's more work than they realized, or it doesn't quite work out. There's a lot of, and I think that we decided very consciously to put, not only to share all this information, which is like kind of risky if you think about it, we're sharing it with all our competitors right in our own backyard as well as everywhere. But it's like, no, we're all really quite a bit better if we share information and then kind of have a fair platform for making a living, because it's not easy. And I'm not going to say we've got that nut fully cracked. I think even with that co-op as a tool, I don't think a lot of us are making the money that our staff is making. And that's, kind of, we look at that, and we who are on the board look at that, and we're like, well, okay, well, it's a good opportunity. It's so much better than not having it. But we're not, quote unquote, there yet either. Us farmers don't get the paid time off and the retirement pay. We don't get all that stuff that, the fringe benefits and all of that a lot of the world comes to expect as a job, and so it's a work in progress. So you get to the situation where you're like, okay, well, there's a lot of ignorance in the trade, especially new people maybe don't know how much to charge. And we're like, that's really harming the industry, and you're harming that little farm also. That new farm is harming itself. And if it's underselling radically to the people, it's like, well, maybe there's florists who will want that, because florist is not an easy industry either. So like, okay, but that's a scramble to the bottom. You're not going to stay in business doing that. And it's about more about relationships and quality. And we're like, okay, we want the newer farmers to understand some baseline about pricing. I mean, obviously you can, you're your own business. You can charge what you want, but really none of us are making a killing. So better we raise that quality standard and charge a fair price. Am I showing my Scottish roots?
Yeah, maybe a little, but I think it's great. And again, maybe it's not going to be relevant for every grower in every market, but again, it's that sort of starting off point, oh wow, that maybe that's a little bit more valuable than I thought it was, or oh gee, that maybe isn't the crop for me because it's kind of cheap. So I thought that was a really useful list, and I think yeah.
You'll notice in there, because we knew it would get out of date relatively quickly if we put it on. We don't want to put it on every page, but we wanted to just give people an idea. You'll notice we list white flowers separate from, like, white dahlias are more expensive than colored dahlias. And there's a reason for that. They're harder to handle. They have tons more bugs. There's a perfection standard on them, So it's like, we're equating that pricing to what it costs to grow it and sell it. So, it's a business, even though it's also a passionate industry that people are drawn to for their souls. It's like, it's also, you have to keep your business alive to keep your soul fed, So that's what that's for.
That's great. No, and I think even if in 10 years that price list is out of date, just as you say, sort of seeing the flowers relative to each other is a hugely helpful resource.
One other thing with the pricing is, of course, it's not the same pricing everywhere in the country. A small town won't bear this. This is Seattle area wholesale. It's what, so of course you adjust that by where you are. I mean, that's also why we kind of oriented the book. If we just put this as one place on the planet, people can translate it. If we try and be everything for everybody, we're not going to know what we're saying, and it's going to be confusing. So that's why we really consciously made that decision to be like, hey, this is what it is, where it's coming from, and then it's easy for people to translate into their own region.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And the book is so clear about that. It's very centered in Seattle and in the market. It also just provides great sort of history and background and photographs of the market. So in addition to being this great resource, it's kind of like a storybook, an archive of the history of this co-op. So yeah, so I'm just sort of curious how do you envision this book being used? Who's it for, and sort of who should go buy it?
Oh, thank you. I would say that I've done a little bit of speaking around the book just to help represent it to different places. And whenever I talk about it with a PowerPoint, I'm not trying to sell it. I'm really trying to connect with the growers. And usually, I don't think I've had talked where 80% of the growers didn't own that book by the time they left that room. It's like people just go, oh, yeah, I need that. So it was designed to be that for growers, just a super useful resource. I suppose the only kind of growers who wouldn't, if you really got your game figured out and you're doing a certain number of crops and you know exactly what you're doing with them and you're not planning to innovate, that would be the only growers who wouldn't benefit, I think. Otherwise, it's like, oh, I could grow something different. Cool. And there's a whole recommended varieties section in there that helps. It's not all the kinds you could grow, but at least it's a baseline. You can start sourcing materials and plants. So there's that. But I was doing some speaking with like the Seattle Garden Club recently, which is a chapter of a national organization of garden clubs. And it was just so lovely to connect with these botanically passionate, incredibly knowledgeable gardeners. And I found a real coming together there. And there was like, oh, I know my garden really well. I know plants really well, but I didn't know which ones I could cut and how to cut them. And so there's and they have that chapter has a whole flower arranging thing they do. So there's a lot of, I think it really crosses over into the passionate home gardener arena, the people with cutting gardens and that sort of thing as well, which is cool. I mean, I didn't realize it would quite as much. We created this so that we could stay alive as a co-op. We had to. And then once we figured that out, we're like, well, we have this information. Then, one of those board retreats, we said, okay, let's make a book out of this information, which was quite a lot more work than we realized it would be, just like starting a co-op is. But then once we had the book, we're like, okay, well, this is going to be helpful for farmers. And then, yeah, and more. And we're selling it all over the world. So it's resonating. And that makes me happy. And I don't think we would have done it. I mean, we're not people who wanted to become publishers. We were just people who needed to have it done and realized there was nothing like it in the world that we could find. And I find that a little startling. So hopefully that opens doors for lots of people to be able to have an easier time making a living, because it's never going to be easy, but easier is a great idea, I think.
Absolutely. And just again, it's been I've had it on my kitchen table for the past month and I've looked at it daily and I've learned from it, even though I feel like I'm a pretty experienced grower. I know what I'm doing with my crops, but I've learned so much from this book. So thank you for making it so widely available to all of us outside of your co-op.
On behalf of our farmers who contributed so much of their hard-earned knowledge, you're welcome.
So Diane, thank you so much. Was there any other topics or crops you wanted to chat about?
No, just I so appreciate your enthusiasm and the energy that you put into researching this before you interviewed me. It's been a real pleasure talking with you. So thank you, and good luck to all of flower farmers out there. I mean, we're a time-honored tradition for a lot of millennia. People been farming flowers, and go get them.
Oh, I like that. Let's end on that note. Go get them. And where can they go and get the book? Where should folks run to purchase it?
It's available on the co-op website, which is swgm.coop. You'll see a drop-down menu, and if you just log in there, you'll just real quickly see where you can purchase it. We decided to we're self-published, we self-authored, and then we published it at a local printer there in Seattle. And so we're just selling it from the co-op right now.
Perfect. So I'm sure folks will be picking this up soon, and I know that I'm loving it, and it's going to be a great guide for me the rest of the season. So thank you so much, Diane. It was great chatting with you.
You too. And if any of you out there, including you, Rebecca, have suggestions for us for the next edition of the book, recommended varieties, something you might find we didn't quite get perfect, just let us know. I mean, this thing belongs to the industry. We're open. We're part of you.
Awesome. Thank you, Diane. Thanks again.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Growing for Market podcast. If you've been enjoying the show, please consider giving us a follow and a rating or a review. It really helps others find the podcast. For more tips and information from farmer to farmer, check out our magazine at growingformarket.com. Whether you're a commercial grower or just want to grow like one, subscribe to Growing for Market magazine for the nitty-gritty of growing, marketing, and the business of market farming. We publish 10 issues per year with articles written by experienced farmers on topics ranging from tools and techniques to farm business operations and marketing. If you've been listening to the Growing for Market podcast and haven't yet checked out the Growing for Market magazine, we've made a change so that you can try the magazine for free. We've added a free month to the beginning of all first-time subscriptions. Try out the digital or paper magazine, and if it's not for you, cancel within 28 days and you'll never get billed. With digital subscriptions starting at just $39 per year, you get a year of the magazine, plus over 150 back issues from the last 15 years. Head on over to growingformarket.com and subscribe today to benefit from over 3 decades of writing by farmers for farmers in Growing for Market magazine.